Hello, everyone. Today, I'm going to demonstrate DinMo Activate. This module allows you to segment your data and activate it for specific business destinations. What we call activate is sending the segmented or unsegmented data to a business destination, whether it's ads like Google, Meta, etc., CRM or CEP like brace, patch, attitude, etc., support, or personal insights. The first thing you can do with DinMo Activate, as I mentioned, is segment your data. There's a dedicated segment section for this. To create a new segment, simply click New Segment. DinMo supports different types of segments. The most commonly used type is user segments, which allow you to create a list of people who meet specific conditions. So, this is really what we'll do most of the time. Send data to Google Meta for exclusion, targeting, lookalike matching, and so on. Or send it to destinations like CRM, CEP, or support to get a list of people we want to target with a specific action. However, we'll have more advanced use cases, depending on the platforms, but we might want to create event segments. One use case, for example, is to send conversions to Google Meta, TikTok, and so on, to drive offline conversions or better track the sales cycle in general across advertising platforms. And the last type of segment we can create is custom segments. As the name suggests, these are truly custom. These will include product segments, company segments, and so on. In any case, the segment builder generally looks the same. Overall, we'll have a first section that allows us to set conditions on the model we're segmenting. So here, I've chosen a user segment. I need to segment first based on my customers. Then, I'll be able to set conditions on other data, which is models linked to my customers. So, for example, my transactions, my predictive models, and I'll be able to add conditions to these models, so it's really a multi-entity segment builder. The last section will be about using existing segments if I want to include or exclude people who are part of another segment. So, the first thing is to add conditions on my customers. Here, if I want, for example, all the people who are opt-in, I can set an initial condition like this. Then, I can add as many conditions as I want, wherever I want, and nest them as I like. I'll give you a simple use case. If I want all the people who opted in via SMS and have a churn risk greater than 7%, I just need to set those initial conditions. Each time I can preview my data. This gives me an idea of how many people are in my segment and what percentage of my database that represents. So here, I see that I'm retrieving 1,390 people, which is 2% of my overall database. I can already get some initial insights from this data. Obviously, I have a preview that lets me see if I've missed any conditions. For example, I could have added a condition based on consent status. And I can also see how my data is distributed across the categorical fields. For instance, if I want to see the preferred channel of these 1,390 people, I can preview it like this. So here we see that, I have approximately 474 people out of 1,390 who prefer SMS. If I look at it as a percentage, that's 34% of people who prefer SMS. So this can really give an indication of how I'm going to use this segment. Am I going to split it into several segments? Or am I going to send everything on the same channel, for example? And I could look at any other categorical field from the same one? This way, I can see how things would have gone based on my database. So, these are really the initial insights I can get from my segment builder. Then, if I want to add conditions not on customers but on related models, I can select them. So here I want to select transactions, for example, and say I want all the people who opted in via SMS have a churn risk greater than 0.7, and in addition, haven't made a purchase in the last 6 months. For example, okay? I add my condition, and again, I can preview to see how many people are in my segment. So, I see that overall, it hasn't changed much, which makes sense. I have a high churn risk, and therefore, overall, these people haven't made a purchase very recently. I've only lost 2 people. Furthermore, I could add conditions on models that are related to my transactions, or again, to my customers. Here, I know my customers make transactions, and these transactions are linked to products. So I can add conditions to the products. For example, I could say, I want all the people who are at risk of churn to receive SMS messages who haven't made a purchase in the last 6 months and who haven't bought a specific product, typically during those months. So I'm not going to change the size of my segment, but I could. Say the product isn't underwear. There you go. If I wanted to add conditions to other data related to either my transactions or my customers, I would still have to choose a linked model. So I have customers who make transactions, and these transactions are linked to products. I can add conditions to the products to include people who have never bought a certain type of product, for example, but I can also create a model linked to customers and not to transactions. And in those cases, I could potentially take commitments on my brand's website. So, for example, if I want people who haven't made a purchase in the last 5 months, and who, in addition, haven't visited the site in the last 6 months, I can also select people who haven't had any activity in the last 6 months. Then I could preview what percentage this represents of my base and see how it has reduced my segment. The last thing I can do, as I said, is include or exclude people from the segment I'm building. So, potentially, I could include only opt-in users. I had set a condition based on SMS opt-in, but that doesn't cover email opt-in, and so on. So, I could say I'm only including these people from this segment. I'm not going to do that, but it gives you an idea of how to use this condition. So, I'm happy with my conditions. I can save them. I'm just going to give it a name and a description, optionally. The name is what will be used on the platforms. It's what we'll receive on Meta, on Braze, and so on. The description is also optional. It's for you to help you find your way around your different segments and understand what they generally represent. So, I'm going to give it a name, just demo test, and save it. Once saved, I can either activate it directly or go back to my existing segments. Here, I'll go to my existing segments. This is the list of all the segments I've already created. We can see here that I'm retrieving the one I just created, but I can also go to a segment that was created several days ago, click on it, and get various insights. Insights on size, turnover, the number of destinations it was sent to, and the activation status. So, if I want to activate this segment, which means sending it to other destinations, I just have to click on Activate, and it will bring up a pop-up of the destinations I've already connected to DinMo, but to which I haven't yet sent data. So, I could say, I want to send it to my Meta account. I want to send it to my Reddit account. I want to send it to my TikTok account, for example. If I click Activate here, it will use the default activation settings I've already entered. I've already entered the email address in DinMo, which corresponds to what Meta calls the email address. The first name in DinMo corresponds to the first name in Meta, and so on. But I could click on Advanced Configuration Settings here to modify this mapping and change the sending frequency. I'll show you the overall mapping and sending frequency. I could then use these default activation settings or modify them. In those cases, I would click on Advanced Configuration. Here, I can see where I'm sending my data to Reddit, how the changes are mapped. I can add mappings, modify the sending frequency, and configure specific alerts for this activation. I won't do that here. So, I just click Cancel, and then Activate, and my segment will be sent to the destinations within a few seconds. This can then be used for audience targeting on Meta, Reddit, and so on, for targeting, exclusion, or lookalike audiences, for example.